What is going on, people? Welcome to the On a Level podcast, episode 36. Today, we've got the man himself, Kev. How you doing?
What's going on, Chazza? I'm alright. What's going on? Thanks for having me on.
Ah, man, it's all good. I see you did Fractures Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, shout out to Frax. Yeah, it was just a blessing for me to be on an episode, especially like I was saying last night with How and Nate Flagrant, two dudes who definitely paved the way for people like myself to work in music, and obviously Frack's been such a long-standing pillar of the scene. So, just to be on a show with those guys was, just massive for me. And yeah, I had fun. I like to do more of that shit, so yeah, anyone who wants to have me on their show, have me on.
And I'm sure that's vice versa, because obviously you've got your own interview platform, Filterzine. How did Filterzine come about?
Filter? Yeah, I've been working in journalism for years, man, because, I've been working in journalism close to 10 years now,
Yeah.
And I guess it just came from, at a time I was starting to feel a little bit disillusioned with kind of like, the hip-hop scene here was blowing up. I'm sure you would know, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, things really started to pick up, and there was just no one covering hip-hop properly, like, in my eyes. I mean, I was working at another magazine at the time, but it wasn't a hip-hop focused platform, which is kind of why I left. I started doing the 111 thing a little bit more. And then, it was about February last year that, Chris Lutfi, who's another dude that I've worked with for years and years, he's a photographer, videographer. He does set design for a lot of companies, a lot of brands, shit like that. He was like, I've got the photography background, you got the journalism background. Let's just start something, because the scene needs support right now. You know what I mean? The scene needs someone to kind of, really foster in the next generation and do more in-depth stuff with the guys that are established. So we just did it. First one was OneFour, which was really fucking lucky now looking back on it.
Yeah, man. That's huge, man. Huge.
Yeah. I mean, back then, I've been friends with Ricky and Hal for a couple of years now, and they were kind of like, these OneFour boys, you should, get onto them, sort of thing. And, like me and Chris were like, fuck yeah, it's kind of interesting, we're just going to do it. And back then they had a couple, they had heat, like Ready for War, What those sort of tracks were on a few 100,000. But, no one was really talking about them in the media space, at least. So yeah, we just did OneFour, which ended up being probably the luckiest thing that's ever happened. Yeah. And yeah, that got there.
Yeah, man, that was absolutely huge for you. Congrats on that, man. But and you also deserve it, man, because I've watched a few different interview and media platforms of people, interviewing and talking to these artists, and I in my personal opinion, you do it the best. Honestly, I honestly think you do it the best. I think you're great in terms of the way that you compose your questions and how you present them. I also think it's great the way you just seem to relate to the artist. Obviously, working within the industry and being very current and up to date with everything that's going on, you just seem to ask the right questions, man. So as a fan almost, as someone who just enjoys watching the content, it is a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, thanks, bro. I guess that's a massive. It's massively important for me to ask the right questions. Like I was saying with Frax last night, I don't really interview artists that I haven't met before, because I want to have that vibe in the interview where it's like, we understand each other and we have a mutual respect for each other. You know what I mean? With that, just the scene blowing up right now the way that it is, and especially with artists that are as controversial or polarizing as OneFour, I feel like it's really important to get that story out there correctly. You know what I mean? Like, I said this from the start with Filter, it was never our intention to go out there and get the most clicks. If I wanted to get the most clicks, I would have fucking put stupid headlines or would have done, more clickbaity content. And we could have gotten that route. But I think what's more important in the long run is, with these artists that are coming up now, artists who are probably going to, put Australia on the map on a global scale, it's really important to get their story out correctly and have them represented correctly, with the right information, with the right research. And I think in a couple of years' time, that's going to be the things that people look back on, these interviews, and they're going to be like, oh fuck, remember when OneFour blew up? Or remember when, so and so blew up, this person blew up, Rops blew up, whoever. Mm-hmm. People are going to look back and be like, man, that was a really exciting time. And that's what we've tried to do, just capture, these years as accurately and as, authentically as we can.
Yeah, man, I think it's great to see how you've gone about it. And also, I mean, with you mentioning about creating a platform where it's more based on clickbait, it's more about how many people are coming through. And, I feel like that's great short term. You know, you get the views, you get the likes, you get the subscribers, you get the ad revenue if you're at that point, etc., etc. But I mean, long term, if we're thinking about creating a platform that people respect also as well. I mean, just speaking on behalf of the UK, not to name names, but there are certain platforms where the interviews do thousands of numbers, but people almost joke about people going on that platform, or there's memes created of people going on that platform, and it doesn't seem to be as respected as some of the other slightly smaller podcasts or interview platforms, which are still respected. They still do their fair share of numbers, but, you know, they seem to have that higher level of respect. And for the artists who don't go on the big media runs, if they do choose to go and do something, they might choose that one platform to speak out on a certain situation or promote an album, etc., etc. I mean, has that always been something in mind in terms of we want to create kind of the best platform for something or the most respected, or is it just kind of you're doing things properly, you're doing things how you believe it should be done, and then it just takes you to wherever it will end up leading?
Yeah, I think it's just we do things the way that, you know, if I was an artist, that's the way that I would want to be represented on the media side of things. Don't get me wrong, you know, like some of the clickbait or kind of like shorter, more snappier pieces, you know, they're really entertaining to watch, but that's just not really my style, you know, like there's other interviewers and other podcasters who do that style really well, you know, but I'm not going to try and go there because, you know, I think this route is going to be kind of like the stuff that stands the test of time. Well, like you said, it's even like music, you know, like with music, you can make songs that are instantly going to get, you know, thousands amount of views, but will that song stand the test of time for 10 years? You know, a lot of rappers, you know, they're going to be getting a lot of heat now, but in 10 years time, you know, where are they going to be? And I think, you know, as just creators of any content, you've got to be mindful of that, you know. With that being said, we're probably going to do shorter form content soon, like, kind of more lighthearted stuff, which is still insightful. But, you know, the deep end, there's only kind of like certain artists that can go on that show because, you know, we're trying to do, you know, 45 to an hour long conversations, you know, and, you know, you have to kind of be a legacy artist or someone who's made a really big impact to be able to sit down and, you know, do something that long and, you know, have a lot of things to say. But yeah, with Filter as well, it's never been just about creating a media platform, you know, like last year before Corona happened, even the start of this year, we were getting brands kind of hitting us up being like, hey, can you help us, you know, put a hip hop show on? Can you help us, you know, secure performers for a store opening that we have? And that just comes down to like what you were saying before, kind of about being trusted with taste, you know, like if brands come to us with, you know, hey, we've got X thousand amount of dollars and we want to put, you know, 3 artists and 1 DJ on for this store opening, they're just going to come to us and ask, you know, and then we obviously make sure everything's all good, make sure the equipment's there, make sure everyone turns up on time. So yeah, it's never been about just media. It's been kind of about, you know, creating a community, you know, putting up and coming artists on, just doing the whole thing, you know, not just doing videos and interviews.
So you're doing the interviews, you've got that platform. You're also in management with 111, Nerve, and anybody else?
Nah, just those two for now.
And I'm sure they keep you busy enough between those two.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because, you know, when Corona happened, everyone was talking about everything slowing down, but with those two, it was just going up and up and up. 111, you know, we've been laying low for a little bit, but there's a reason for that. You know, it's going to be a big year for 111. We got some stuff on the way, which we're just kind of working through now. And Nerve obviously is just like, he's been fucking everywhere, you know. I didn't even know about half the shit that he did that he was dropping. He dropped 5 features in a week. I was like, bro, you got to tell me, you know. I was like, bro, I knew about 3 of them. You got to tell me about the other 2. Like, and they all just ended up dropping in a 1 month kind of like space, you know. So he's been everywhere. And, you know, I think everybody knows it's going to be a massive year for him. Like, again, I was saying with Frax last night, it kind of hit a really bad time because I think, you know, his live show is crazy. And just as he was starting to get that attention on, you know, the more mainstream live / festival slot type of space, that's when Corona hit. So, you know, we had, between 111 and Nerve, we had, you know, 30 shows cancel. But, you know, they're all going to be rescheduled and it's, you know, people have bigger things to worry about in the world. We just got a couple of shows canceled. It just means that 2021 is going to have a bigger year. But yeah, they keep my hands full. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, with Nerve, obviously, I've spoken so highly of him over the past few months with the disgusting work rate that he's had. You know, as you said, your management and not even you're able to keep up with everything he's doing. I'm not even sure if Nerve's able to keep up with everything he's doing, but honestly, he has absolutely smashed it in the first half of this year, leading into the second half, and I'm sure that he's got so much more planned. And as you said, bad timing in terms of right now. If he was doing shows or touring, you know, I'm sure them shows would be just crazy. But as you said, pending it, those shows will just be delayed. They'll be happening later on this year or start of next year. And I think I said this to somebody before. When shows do start happening again, they're gonna be crazy, man. People are going to be dying to go to shows. Like what's the time frame of artists looking to perform?
They literally just said today or yesterday, being like November, they're going to start doing kind of smaller, socially distanced gigs. But I don't really know what that means. I don't think anyone knows what that means right now. Does that mean like, you know, everything's going to be seated, or are people going to have to be 1.5 meters apart? In that case, I'd rather just wait until early next year and do a full proper show. Because, you know, you can't see 111 like just sitting down with 1.5 meters, you know, just
it's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, we need at least 7 stage dives, bro. We need Cold Boy Has up there stage diving, cartwheeling in the crowd. We need, you know, all the boys up there. But yeah, in that case, we're probably going to wait till early next year. It just depends. There's so much up in the air right now. You know, things are changing. Things are changing so fast. Just this morning, they said in New South Wales that you can, they're going to open clubs back up in August. But exactly what that's going to look like, I don't really know. But, you know, Falls Festival, which is a massive festival that Nerve played last year, they're doing an all-Australian lineup this December. So I think, you know, what's going to happen is we're going to have small club shows, all-Australian lineups for at least, you know, the next 6 or 7 months. And then probably in March, April, that's when they'll start looking at bringing in internationals. Obviously, pending what happens overseas, you know, with the corona stuff. It's a bit unpredictable, but, you know, I think that early 2021 time slot is when everyone's looking for live shows to kind of be back to the way they were before. Yeah. And
with obviously, because in my mind I was just about to say that would be winter for you guys, but that's the opposite. In January, February, March, that's the back end of your summer. So I mean, in terms of festivals and things like that, what's the hot spot for all festivals and big events like that happening? Doesn't that normally happen around November for you guys?
It usually happens around that New Year's Eve period. So in that period, which is like, just the height of our summer kind of, you know, you have Field Day, which is a huge one, you know, Skepta, Playboy Cardi, all that kind of caliber of act play that. Then we've got like Beyond the Valley, Lost Paradise, Falls Festival, like I said before, that's kind of like the hub of it. A lot of festivals kind of went under during Corona, you know, a lot of them have disappeared already, just, you know, financially it hasn't been an easy time. But, you know, July in the middle of our winter, that's when our biggest one is Splendor in the Grass. So that one in 2020 was supposed to be 111, Chillin' It, and Hooligan Hefts. You know, that were the 3 guys from our kind of little circle that was going to play that. And I think that would have been a massive moment. But again, you know, it's a shame it got cancelled, but I'm sure, you know, 2021 is going to come back bigger.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, I'm sure artists themselves and fans alike are dying to, you know, be at live shows, just be soaking in that atmosphere, because it is amazing to see, you know, things like that happening. In terms of shows and things like that, I'm sure it isn't as much of an issue for people like 111 or Nerve, but in regards to things being shut down and, you know, shows being cancelled, or, you know, police saying, oh, this event's too dangerous or whatever, is that still going on in Australia and New Zealand?
I'm not sure about New Zealand. I don't think New Zealand has that, because I'm pretty sure HP Boys and 30 Kings, a couple of those acts went over there and played there. Australia, though, it is a problem. Obviously, the landmark kind of case around that was the OneFour situation. They had a whole tour shut down. They couldn't play the Dave show. And then since then, we've kind of seen, even artists who aren't even drill artists kind of be given the same treatment. I remember there was a charity show. I don't remember the lineup in full, but there was a charity show, underground hip hop show, and that got cancelled. And that wasn't even drill. You know what I mean? It just kind of feels like they're just, you know, taking everything that's hip hop, which is even like a little bit abrasive, and just kind of being like, no, we're not letting that happen. But I don't know what the situation with that is, but, you know, obviously everyone in the music industry just wants to kind of make a living. You know, very few artists can kind of go out there and make all their money off merchant streams. You know, the live show is where people can make their living. So I think for stuff to get shut down, especially when there's not really any good reason for it, you know, obviously it fucking sucks. There's not really that much more to say about it. And I don't. Yeah, I understand that, you know, there might be precautious about something happening here and there, but, you know, OneFour played shows in Sydney with nothing happening, you know what I mean? So, who knows? Yeah, they did go around pressuring a lot of venues, though, a lot of pubs, this and that, just going around asking questions, and eventually, yeah, they just gave them no choice but to shut that shit down.
Yeah. I mean, how does the media have an influence on that? I mean, does what is the media like in Australia at the moment in terms of mainstream media? If we're looking at things like the news and even radio and things like that, is Australian hip hop and street rap looked down upon? Is it now starting to slowly be supported, or what's the situation there?
Yeah, I mean, when the mainstream media first started writing about underground hip, like, you know, drill, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I put a post up on my Instagram being like, "Don't talk to media." You know.
Right.
Don't talk to them.
Why shouldn't people talk to the media?
Because there's, you know, newspapers and that media like that, they aren't there to help the hip hop scene. You know what I mean? They're there for a story. They're not there to, you know, boost your profile in any way. They're there to make the most scandalous story out of anything, you know. And then when the OneFour stuff started happening, you know, they did an article on OneFour and they quoted Filter in it. And I just put a little post up being like, in this time, you know, just don't talk to him, you know, like unless it's someone who comes in with the, you know, with the pure aim of, you know, promoting your career and promoting your music. They're going to take things out of context. You know, that's just their job, you know. That's why when I started doing journalism, you know, I did one journalism elective at uni, and then, you know, they train you to kind of become that sort of journalist for a newspaper, for a bigger platform. And then, you know, I went off and was like, no, I'm going to start my own thing, because ethically and just morally, I just couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm here to support hip hop music, I'm not going to work for a massive newspaper that, you know, is just looking to run a story about the most sensationalist aspect of one artist. That being said, I have done a few, you know, music reviews and festival reviews for, you know, newspapers and stuff like that, you know, a couple of years ago. But I think when the OneFour stuff started happening and they started focusing on more the criminal aspect of things that had happened, that's when I was like, oh, this is probably going to get bad, you know. And yeah, there's been hundreds of stories run on OneFour, but, you know, not that many from a pure music perspective.
Yeah. And so does that link back to your point earlier of the difference between a podcast and an interview that is pure, and you have that relationship with the artist and you understand them and you're there to, you know, help create something that helps the artist connect with their fans, versus, right, I'm going to ask you difficult questions, and when you make that one statement that I'm then going to twist for a headline and then get all the clicks, is that kind of the difference that you're talking about then?
100, bro. Like, you know, a lot of the artists that I interview, they don't do interviews at all, but it's just because I've known them for years and they have a certain trust in us that we're not going to go out there and ask fucking difficult questions or questions that are going to be taken out of context. You know what I mean? You know, Triple One did an interview once, and, you know, they said something like, oh yeah, Triple One, you know, your song Doozy, that had like an Asian kind of inspired sample in it. And then they said to Marty, being like, oh, do you get offended when, like, you know, like non-Asian people sample Asian instruments in their music? And Marty was kind of like, oh, dude, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't even thought about that. And like, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just felt a bit like they were trying to get him to say something that they could grab and put in a headline. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And looking back on that, you know, Doozy is fucking 6 years old or 7 years old or whatever. And like, yeah, you can ask about it, but I think just questioning coming from that kind of angle was kind of intended to make him kind of, you know, trip up a little bit, you know, and you know, from our point of view, it's like, we love it when people use Asian instruments, you know, like me and Marty both, we love it when people, you know, take instruments or sounds from our culture and kind of put their own twist on it, you know. That's just our opinion, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's kind of when it gets into like a little bit of a fickle territory where you're like, you know, what is your actual aim of interviewing me? Is it to help me support my music, or are you trying to make me say something that's going to be a headline? And that's the difference. We're not trying to make anyone say something stupid or do something which could be misinterpreted. You know, we come in with a pure with the pure intent of letting the artist tell their story. And I think, like looking at the interviews, you can see that, I'm not going out there asking Husky, fucked questions to make him say something that could be controversial,
Yeah.
I just go in there because people want to hear his story. His music is so personal. His music's so intimate. So many people relate to it. And I'm sure people want to see him speak on his life events outside of a song. They probably want to see him just talk about it candidly. Mm-hmm. And yeah, props to Husky. When he came on, he was so candid, so open. And I think, a lot of people DM'd us about that interview being like, that was crazy hearing Husky speak about that because he's helped me through this or he's helped me through that. So it's nice to be able to just let the artist, really speak in a safe space where they trust the interviewer and where they trust that, things are going to be done correctly, so to speak.
Yeah, man. You know what? I think that's amazing that, you mentioned about not wanting to get involved in big mainstream media because of your personal morals, right? And so when we take that and then you're interviewing people like Husky where he has such a personal story, where he has, such an interesting background, and then you're talking with him and you're asking the right questions, and then as you said, the finished product goes out online and you've got people DMing you and asking you about it and talking to you about it, saying how Husky's helped me, etc., etc. I mean, I think that's the difference. You morally have Husky and his fan base in your best interest, versus that clickbait title that gets people coming in that don't even necessarily care about Husky, who may not even listen to Husky. They see the headline and click on it, and versus that, I'm gonna do something that's gonna help the culture, and I know a lot of people say that this is for the culture, but I feel like if you have genuine intentions behind what you're doing, and you do provide value to the people out there who do genuinely care about this shit, then yeah, I do say that is helping the culture. What do you think about like media outlets or just anyone in particular who kind of say that they're doing things for the culture? What's your perspective on that kind of that kind of catchphrase there that people love throwing it out, out
for the culture? Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It just depends on who says it, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like you were saying, there are people who do stuff for the culture, and there's no shame in going out there and saying it if you're actually doing it. Pretty sure Hooligan Hefs and Elijah Yo and those boys, they have a song called "For the Culture." Yeah. But they are from the culture. They are from the culture. Yeah. They are doing it.
No, of course.
So I've got no problem with that. Yeah, it's just a tricky one because like obviously music at the end of the day, it is a business. No one can argue that it's called the music industry, it's a music business. Everyone's out trying to live off music. But at the end of the day, I think people, especially in hip hop, when artists are already a little bit skeptical of media and skeptical of industry, people can tell when people aren't doing it for the right intentions. And don't get me wrong, like I wouldn't mind working at like a bigger media outlet in the future for sure, but things would have to be done correctly. Things would have to be done in there's certain nuances and certain things that you have to kind of do when you're working in the hip hop scene that probably can't be applied anywhere else. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, if I was to work at a bigger platform in the future, that would be mad, but it just have to be done in the right way. I don't want to come on here and make it sound like I'm being like, fuck mainstream.
No, of course. I mean, I'm sure that's the case for many people,
Like I worked at MTV. That just goes to show you. But again, with MTV, they kind of let us kind of take the reins on that, and full props to them for letting us curate the playlist and report on what we wanted to report. But if it ever got to a stage where I worked at a more bigger media platform and they did say, oh, you can do this artist, but can you ask them this, and they edited it and chopped it up all fucked to make it sound like something that it wasn't, that's kind of when you would draw the line,
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive thing, having full ownership of what you do as well. Being able to express yourself through your form, whether that be journalism, whether that be through music, whether that be through whatever it is, as long as you are in control. And that's what I think's great about, obviously, I'm sure you're aware of Joe Rogan's Spotify deal.
Yeah. How much 100 million or whatever.
Yeah, and it's gonna be more than that. Believe me, with all the add-ons and extra, that man's, he's in a good position. And I see some people commenting online, and they were saying, but Joe Rogan sold out, and it's like, one minute. Pause yourself. Joe Rogan's getting like millions of views per podcast, and he's posting every other day. Yeah, given he has the likes of like Andrew Schultz, Kevin Hart, Tony Hawk on his podcast, you know, in the same week and things like that. But of course, Rogan's worked so hard to get to that position. You know, thousands of episodes. You know, and with this Spotify deal, to my understanding, it's a exclusivity deal in terms of Spotify approached them and said, look, listen, we're not going to tell you how to do anything. We're not going to, you know, you don't have to just have it exclusively on our platform. You just go do your thing. We're just going to pay you X amount just to have it on our platform. And he's just gone, oh, what, still my same team, still like me, everything? Yeah, sure, why not? All right, cool. I'm just going to get the bag. Like, if people who truly care about our podcast are going to move over to Spotify anyway. I mean, when we're looking at Spotify, am I right in saying Spotify is the biggest streaming platform?
In Australia, yeah.
Yeah. I'm 99% sure it is worldwide, obviously outside of YouTube. And so you've got the people there, and then you've got the people who are on Spotify who may not listen to Joe Rogan, see him on the trending page, see him at #1 on like everything, and then goes, I might listen to that. So I don't see Joe Rogan losing out whatsoever. Like,
yeah, what does that even mean, Joe Rogan sold out? It's easy for people to say that they haven't got fucking $100 million sitting in front of them, you know what I mean? Props to Joe Rogan collecting the bag. That's just a term that really kind of pisses me off, you know what I mean? Like, selling out, it's like I said, fucking music, it's so hard to, you know, make a living off. And if you've got that opportunity there and you have, you know, the right network and the right team around you who's going to let you be authentic to yourself, there's no reason why you shouldn't work with people or sign a deal that could improve your career. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. People just like obviously there are artists who sell out. Yes, there are artists who sell out, but a lot of the time that term just gets thrown around whenever someone's successful. Yeah. You know, I'm all for Joe Rogan collecting that bag. You know, that man was on Fear Factor, commentating UFC, and now he's got his own podcast that he sold for $100 million. You know, you can't not respect that. Yeah, I think that term just gets thrown around way too much. But anyway, I love Joe Rogan.
Yeah, man, love Joe Rogan. I sometimes see people hate on him. I absolutely love him. You know, I feel like that's an important point that you made. You know, there's a difference between selling out and being successful. Like, there's a difference between taking a deal to leverage your position and also earn more money versus, you know what, I'm gonna take this because I only want the money. What I mean by that is some people take deals and they lose ownership of their own music. They are not in control of what they put out anymore. And, you know, I don't necessarily blame the individual, because artists get caught up in this, especially young people, when we're talking like 19, 20, 21, 22, and they're seeing this contract in front of them and they're like, what, 50 bags? What? I'm taking that right now. Are you mad? Especially when you're, you know, when you're from a certain background where you didn't grow up with much. You're choosing whether to pay the electricity or the gas bill. You know, when you're coming from that and you're seeing 5 figures in front of you, you're like, are you mad? I'm taking that all day long. And so I don't blame them as an individual, you know. That's more of an industry thing. But, you know, when people get caught in this trap of signing a deal that they don't fully or necessarily understand, you know, versus somebody who's like, okay, so we're going to sign this deal. You're going to invest this much in me. In the long run then, in theory, you should make money. I then leverage and then make more money long term. And then it's a win-win deal. And I don't think there's anything wrong with signing a deal as long as you understand it. You know, as long as you do. How difficult is it for that? Is it something that if you have the right people looking over it and you have the knowledge yourself, is it something that's easy to avoid? Or is that always been a grey area that people have always been caught in? I mean, we've heard the stories time and time again in history.
I think especially in the past 2 or 3 years, every major label in Australia now has a hip hop division. You know, Warner has, you know, the area movement. That's, you know, Ziggy and Manny, those boys. Shout out to them. You know, Universal now has Def Jam Australia. That got established. You know, I'm pretty sure it was last year, if not late 2018, but I'm pretty sure it was 2019. And, you know, Sony has, you know, a hip hop division that's, you know, run by one of my good friends, Patrina Convey. So it is a time when everybody is looking down into the underground much more, because during that Get Bodied movement, when that blew up, that's when everyone was doing insane numbers. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everyone was doing the craziest numbers with no label backing, no media coverage at all. you had guys like, that whole movement. I say time and time and again, that was the most exciting thing. It was, Chillin' It, Husky, Mitchos, Wombat,
Yep.
Triple One, Shadow, all these artists, and that's when everyone started getting offered deals. And, people would kind of ask me for advice, I guess, just because I was the one guy who was kind of like, had been working in the industry for a little bit. And I'm a little bit older than most of those boys.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, first thing I say is just like, fucking, man, like, I can't give you advice without looking at your paperwork. And I don't want to look at your paperwork, that's the thing for you. That's the thing for you and your team. But I'm like, get a lawyer, please, please, please just get a lawyer. Because what people don't understand is, like you were saying, they see the figure there, but an advance is not money. An advance is money you have to pay back through your streams. So they pay you the money up front, but that money is not yours. If you get you hear all these things about $1 million deal, $2 million deals, you have to pay all that money back through your streams, man.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, it's not free money. So if it's good for, if you're an artist and you need capital to kind of, do music videos and you have a label that's willing to push you into spaces which you don't know how to reach yourself, especially with so much, Australian music kind of reaching the UK now, a lot of artists, how the fuck do I know? How the fuck do I get big in the UK? How do I reach, Spotify in the UK, Apple Music in the UK, the right promoters, the right people in the UK? That's something that a label can really help you with. But yeah, the one thing I just kept on saying to people was just get a lawyer, know what you're actually in for, and realize that the advance isn't free money. It looks free money and it feels like free money, but it's not. With that being said, I'm not anti-label at all. Not at all. Most of my friends work at labels. Mm-hmm. It's just, you got to find the right deal for you. You look at the deal, you say, okay, how much are they investing in me? What are they offering me that I can't do myself? That's the big question. And if it's nothing, then stay independent, man. Do that independent.
Well, that's the thing, you're hearing plenty of people, whether it be artists or people that have been in the industry, and I may be speaking slightly more from a UK perspective here, but listening to people say that you can do this shit without signing a deal. Like, yes, in some ways it's harder work, and yes, you need to have the right people around you, because when people say that they're independent, that doesn't mean they physically do everything themselves. Like, they still have management, sometimes they may have a PR team, they still have accountants, lawyers, people around, they have the right people around them, But being independent, meaning that you are in control of the people around you, and it's your team that you built yourself,
and you own the music.
And so if you're able to do that, fantastic, go for it. There is nothing wrong with signing the right deal if it works for you and you understand that deal. As you said, not blindly signing something and then realizing, oh, this is how it works. No. From the moment you say, you should have known 3 times over how this works. And again, I'm sure that people get caught out of that, but your biggest piece of advice is, get a lawyer. My piece of advice that I've heard, I've not necessarily put this into practice myself, but what I've heard a lot of people say is, if you do sign something, try keep the deal as short as possible. For example, instead of signing a 7-year deal and you've got to put out 3 albums in that time, just do a 1 year, 1 album deal, or 6 months. Like, the shorter it is, the better. Because if it works, fantastic. You renegotiate and you go from there. If it doesn't work, you keep it moving, And this is a thing that you see in not just music. You see this in UFC, have this thing where you sign a 7-fight deal, and after 2 fights your name blows up, and then you want to renegotiate because you're bringing in more numbers, but you've got 5 more fights to do, and if you don't have enough equity or power, you're not going to be able to re-sign that deal. So I think keeping your deals and anything you sign short, so that if it works, cool, you renegotiate. If it worked out for you and the company or the label or whoever it is, then they should want to renegotiate. You should both parties should want to do business again. And if it doesn't work out, then all right, cool, you keep it moving. You do your bit. All right, cool, that's a little hit or whatever, and you keep it moving. Would you agree with that piece of advice?
Super important, man. I should have mentioned that, actually. Get a lawyer and keep it as short as possible, especially nowadays when, like you were saying, artists can blow up in such a quick amount of time. If you're stuck in a 4-album deal with 2 options, you've just fucked yourself. That's to put it short, you just fucked yourself. And that's why you should get a lawyer to, a lot of people don't know what these terms mean. I'm still learning, like, that's why you got to get a lawyer, you're comfortable hopping on the phone with or seeing in person, he's going to break down every single thing and explain to you what it means. Because a lot of people sign these deals, like you said, for a huge cash amount, and it's like, yeah, okay, I might be getting 100 grand. Oh shit, that's for 5 albums.
Yeah.
And 5 albums, you release an album every 2 years. That's 10 years. Is 100 grand over 10 years good money? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. So yeah, but I think what's happening now, especially with, so many independent artists blowing up, labels are more willing to negotiate on the terms. So they are doing shorter deals because in many ways, independent artists have got the leverage now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You look at, Hefs and OneFour and all those boys have got those numbers without a major label backing. So it's like labels are kind of being like, oh fuck, we're gonna have to be a bit more lenient with our terms and a bit more lenient with the money because these artists are really doing it themselves, having that word of mouth, organic street hype. I think labels are kind of being a lot more flexible with what they're offering as opposed to a couple of years ago, and especially in hip hop.
Yeah, you know what? I think you mentioned something there that is key, and this is my personal. This is almost my little gem to everyone, right? The best advertising and marketing strategy there has been for years, time and tested, is word of mouth. Like, yes, you can do billboards, you can do Instagram and Facebook adverts, you can do Google ads, you can do fucking a tattoo on Barack Obama's forehead. Yeah? Nothing is more powerful than word of mouth. And again, to bring it back to Joe Rogan said it himself. I have never put any money into advertising this podcast. It has always been word of mouth, and I guess the social media platforms algorithms, YouTube algorithms, and obviously now he's like front page and trending consistently. That is so powerful, man. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of artists who kind of get pushed by labels, like you were saying, they get the billboards, they get, all these placements in print media, digital media, they get all the best media. But if the music doesn't connect, then it doesn't connect. You can't do nothing about that. So first and foremost, the music has to connect. And also, if the music connects on that level, it is word of mouth. That's the craziest thing. Like I was saying before, like even with Triple One in the early days, they had hype they obviously got hype off Astari. They were getting hype in the UK, in Europe, because they were on a big platform, which helped them a lot. But it was in Sydney that it was kind of like, this person was saying this person, have you seen Triple One? They're the fucking craziest hip hop act I've ever seen. And, that's how I heard about them, because people were just talking, people here and there, and then someone introduced me to Marty, and then I started hearing things, and then I went to the first show. I went to one of their really early shows, which was at one of our friends' pubs. They were playing at fucking 1:30 in the morning, like, I didn't even want to go, I was like, man, I should be in bed now. But like you said, the word of mouth was like, Triple One, you have to see Triple One, and the boys, they hadn't had any Spotify, any songs on any Spotify playlist back then. They had no media whatsoever. Well, I mean, I played them on radio and FBI radio, Joyride and Raph, they played them a little bit. But, it was mainly word of mouth. And then when I went to the show, it was the fucking craziest thing I had ever seen.
Yeah, man.
And it lived up to the word of mouth. And so then I went over there and I told 20 people,
That's the thing,
like, have you heard these crazy white boys, these white Asian boys? They're doing some fucking crazy shit. Especially me coming from, I had a background in, hardcore and punk before I was into hip hop.
Yeah.
And, all my friends had a background in hardcore and punk before they got into hip hop. So I was telling all of them, you know what I mean? And they were like, they were able to capture that energy. And I think that's just how it spread,
Yeah.
And then things just got bigger from there. And I think that the same can be said for a lot of other acts as well. So yeah, word of mouth, definitely a super important thing. And it can't be faked. That's the best thing.
Yeah.
If you have money, you can buy a billboard ad, but who says anyone's going to care about that? Word of mouth is someone actually cared enough to tell their mate about something.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say to people always say, oh, what's the best way for my music to get out there? And I always say, make good music. Make good music and it will naturally, you'll get the ball rolling at some point, Yeah. And anyone can put up Instagram and Facebook ads. I don't know if Gary V has had an influence. I don't know who it is out there, but somebody is getting people to buy a lot of Instagram ads at the moment. Like, I'll scroll through Instagram and then people will be sponsoring their stuff. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, and this looks very amateur, which is cool, if that's how you want to do it, that's fine, But ultimately, This is my perspective on the kind of word of mouth and people telling others about somebody. If I stumble across your Instagram freestyle, it has to be crazy good for you to keep my attention, especially on social media in this age. People give you no more than 5 seconds. If they don't like that first kick drum, they're swiping, they're just clicking, they're scrolling, whatever, and they'll move past it. With word of mouth, if my best friend, who I highly respect his music taste, if he goes, go and check this person out, I will go and give them at least a minute. I will go give them that little bit of extra attention. That might be enough to then draw me in, you know? Versus when you are on the internet, people's attention span is so minuscule. And I don't blame them. I'm the same. I can't watch films anymore because my attention span is so short. I have to stick to YouTube videos because I can't sit with something for too long. And you know, I guess that's a product of the internet era and how fast everything moves nowadays. But having that word of mouth and having somebody that you respect, or somebody you've always, I think everyone's got that one friend of, what songs you got in your playlist? Like, I know you're the plug for the new and upcoming music, you know. And when that person tells you about someone, that is the most powerful moment there. If they're able to go, Triple One, or Nerve, or such and such, have you heard of them? Go and listen, and they're linking you, man. So word of mouth is a crazy powerful tool in that regard.
Yeah, 100. I just think it's also can be a combination of things. Like you were saying, with Instagram ads, there's nothing wrong with running Instagram ads, but you do have to have that organic hype behind it. Because like you were saying, a lot of the time what happens is I'll go out, you know, to a party, or I'll go out to a gig. Someone will be like, oh, have you heard so-and-so? And I'll have that in my head, you know. And then maybe a week later, I'll go on Instagram stories and I've got 5 people that I respect sharing the same person's music. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's the guy that I heard about the other week. And then I'll see an Instagram ad as well. And I'm like, fuck, okay, I'm going to have to check this out because this dude's obviously, you know, like popping, you know what I mean? So I think it's a combination of things. But with that being said, you know, like if I was an upcoming artist, I wouldn't invest, you know, a huge amount into, like you were saying, advertising without having that core fan base and organic hype already there. You know, because that's the stuff which is going to take you through all the way through your career. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, Instagram ads, you'll forget about 5 seconds later. But I'm not going to forget about that Instagram ad if I have 10 other people telling me that this guy is the one. Yeah. You know? So you have to have that first before you invest heavily in advertising, I think.
I hear that massively. So word of mouth. So who are you representing then? Who are you going to recommend for the people to listen to? Have you got any upcoming or lesser known artists that you want to kind of plug quickly?
Lesser known, I guess if we're not talking, you know, the big artists, like, you know, obviously the ones that everyone knows, maybe in the UK for guys if no one's heard of JC. I know you reacted to one of his songs lately.
Couple of them, yeah.
But JC, I think he is fucking really good, you know? Yeah. I like he switched it up from his previous material with something a bit more melodic. I thought the video was funny. Yep. Yeah, we actually put on a gig and we billed him to headline and he fucking smashed it. Yeah. JC's definitely, you know, one of the good up and comers coming up. Scam, obviously, as well. Scam. Yeah, I met him for the first time at the Husky interview. Actually, he came with Husky and Lana. Yeah. You know, he's a really nice dude, and you know, Minutes and Hours. Is that what it's called? Minutes and Hours.
Minutes and Hours. Yeah.
Yeah, his latest song. I should probably know that, but yeah. Yeah, Scam, again, I think he's going to have a massive year. Yeah. Kobe D as well.
Yeah, Kobe D. Kobe D's been about for a minute, hasn't he? If I'm right in saying that.
He has, but he only has a couple of songs out. But you know, every song he has, I think he's probably, you know, one of the most, you know, important storytellers that we have. You know, his delivery, just what he's saying. Just everything's really on point. And, you know, like he supported Triple One on the last tour at one show with Nookie. He killed it. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to him having a massive year as well. She's not up and coming. She's actually been around for ages, but there's a girl called Milan Ring. Okay. She's actually more on the R&B tip, but, you know, she does a little bit of rapping here and there, but she, you know, plays guitar. She produces all her own shit. She's had writing sessions with, you know, Dram and SZA and, you know, artists like that. So people in the hip-hop space might not be that much aware of her.
What's her name? One more time?
Milan Ring. Okay. So like Milan, like the city, and then Ring. Yeah. Yeah, she's dope. She's dope.
Yeah, I'll be checking her out for sure. What's the situation with like R&B in Australia? Because over here, R&B is just massive. It's massive over here, and it's as respected as the hip hop scene is. You know, if you're a rap fan, you should also understand your R&B side. That's how I believe it should be anyway. I know there's some people who are in the hood and they're just like, yeah, you heard of this drill group? And I'm like, do you know your R&B though as well? I feel like you've got to have that balance, man. What's R&B like in Australia? Have you got a lot of Australian artists breaking through, or is it still a smaller thing?
Yeah, I guess especially Melbourne, it's known for kind of its neo soul sound. So it's kind of like that more organic type of R&B. We have a girl called Kate who's pretty huge because she got a co-sign from Jill Scott, I believe it was. But she's she's popping. She's really good. She's probably, the biggest R&B soul artist that we have.
Yep.
Also in Sydney, there's been kind of like a big undercurrent of kind of young R&B artists coming out now.
Yeah.
There's a girl called A Girl. She does some stuff with some heavier hip hop acts and drill acts too, but she's dope. A Girl. There's a song called Lara Andalo. She's like a Filipino Australian singer. She's coming up and she's doing really well as well. Latifah T. Yeah, it's just like they're kind of like, definitely on the more emerging side of things. Milan Ring, like I mentioned before. Those are the ones that are really kind of starting to make an impact in Sydney at the very least. In Melbourne, it's Kite and that kind of like R&B soul space. That's kind of like a really big sound. It's always kind of been like that for Melbourne. Neo soul and grime is kind of like the two things that, when I think Melbourne, that's the first thing I think of.
Amazing, man. And just my own little shout out there is I've only heard one track from him, but Cheeky, who did a song recently. What's the name of the song? I can't remember, but he did a little Beyonce dance in there as well. But yeah, he was cold, man. Absolutely cold, and I want to hear more from him for sure. Yeah, man. I think there's so many dope artists coming out at the moment, and I want to see what they're able to bring to the table in terms of progressing a sound forward, because I'm hearing a lot of people, not a lot, but I'm hearing a handful of people, saying this isn't Aussie hip hop. This isn't what the Australian hip hop that we know for, and I understand where they're coming from, but as music has always been in history, music progresses, I mean,
100.
What's your perspective on kind of, these newer artists bringing in these newer sounds and these newer styles, perhaps taking influence from other scenes and other subgenres, but would you say that's a good or bad thing?
It's amazing, it's amazing. I think hip hop traditionally has just been so territorial and so kind of like closed off in a lot of ways, like even with American hip hop, you know what I mean? Like people will listen to music from the South and be like, oh, this doesn't sound like Mobb Deep, or this doesn't sound like Nas, so it's not hip hop. And it's like, no, it's hip hop. It's just different, It's just a different flavor. Australian hip hop was, in a lot of ways, I think kind of limited in the past. With that being said, like I love all the old shit, I love Hilltop Hoods, I respect so much of what they've done, not only as artists, but also on the label front with Golden Era Records, bringing in a new kind of like generation of artists. Hilltop Hood's Lyrical Commission, I respect all that shit to the fullest, But at the same time, it's awesome that, a lot more diverse artists have been able to kind of incorporate those international influences and make music that's not just going to resonate in Australia.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big thing is grime and drill. Those are the two big scenes which have kind of been able to connect with an overseas audience in a serious capacity. I think it's mad. We haven't had an artist really break through seriously overseas yet. I mean, unless you count Iggy Azalea, but like if you want to count that, you can count that. But yeah. I think in the next 2 to 3 years we're going to see one Australian artist at least make a serious, unless you count the Kid Laroi as well. But,
I was just about to say, what about Laroi? Because I know you posted a clip on Insta a couple of days ago of you doing the clip from 2018, I believe it was. Yeah. What's your perspective on what Laroi's doing at the moment in America?
Big ups to him, man. Laroi, like I said, I actually met him at my, Minor Crooks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was at a listening party for Minor Crooks' EP, And he actually, Leroy came up, like, I didn't know who he was, because it was a party that was, we were just drinking, doing this, doing that. And like Leroy was, he might have been 14 at the time. He came up to me and he was like, "Oh man, are you the guy that released that song, Chinatown Champs?" I was like, "Fuck, you know that song?"
Yeah.
Because it felt like 4 or 5 years ago. He would have been 10,
Shit.
He's like, "Yeah, I know it." Hung out with him for a little bit that night. And then, kind of was asking around, like, "Who's this kid, man?" And people were like, "That's the kid Leroy." And, at that time, the kid Leroy was working with Ziggy, obviously, who looks after Manu. And then I remember Ziggy actually hitting me up and being like, "Hey, man, Leroy really wants to get on stage. Can he open up for 111 at, our show in 2018? He was like, "Can Leroy open up for 111?" But we had all the supports booked by then, so unfortunately we couldn't have him on. And looking back on it now, it's fucking crazy. If we had the Kid Leroy support 111,
Yeah.
that would have been insane. But yeah, we had all the supports booked, unfortunately. But it's been crazy watching him progress because since day one, since I met him, he's always had that hustle about him. He's always been unafraid to go out there, reach out to people, start up a conversation with people. Being 15 years old in a room full of rappers, that's intimidating. But he was, to his credit, he's fully out there. He was connecting, making music, doing this. His 14 with a Dream EP was, I don't know if it's online anymore, but that was crazy. And yeah, I've just been kind of watching him grow throughout the years. And, I did that interview just when he was starting to kind of really pick up national attention. Triple J and FBI Radio, all these people were starting to put a lot of attention on him. And yeah, super lucky we got that interview happening, because it's like, to see him now, it's crazy. I haven't spoken to him, since he left for the States, but I'm sure one day we'll reconnect in some sort of capacity.
Yeah, man, definitely. I mean, someone like Leroy has such a polarizing, he causes such a polarizing opinion on him, from what I see from people. I see, let's split it 50-50. I see 50% of people saying, "You know what, it's amazing what he's doing. He's gone over to the States, a young man, he's grabbing the bag, he's working with these big artists, he's growing as a person as well as an artist. Good for him." I see the other 50% of people saying, but he should be representing Australia, and he's gone over there and he's done an American style, etc., etc. Do you think it's someone like Leroy's duty to represent Australia? Does he have to be screaming Australia in every movement that he does?
Not really. I think what people forget is a lot of it came from that interview he did with Adam 22 on No Jumper, and Adam asked him about Australian hip hop, and he said something like, "Oh, I didn't really listen to any of it because I couldn't relate to it. It was all barbecue hip hop." He said something along those lines. A lot of people got angry about that. But at the same time, can you really blame him, because he would have been born in like 2003. You can't expect someone who was born in 2003 or 2004 to be listening to traditional Australian hip hop from that time, because they weren't even born yet, or they would have been a baby. Could
you argue that if you are an artist and you are a part of a scene, that you should understand its history and at least understand the basics and the classics?
100, but I think he'll do that in his own time and at his own pace. You know what I mean? When I was 17, I didn't know a lot about, I listened to Lyrical Commission and shit, but I didn't know like a lot of the little kind of like things about the scene or certain things I just didn't understand. I just think that people forget a lot of the time that at the end of the day, he's not of drinking age. Put it that way. He's still not of drinking age. You can't expect him to know everything. You can't expect him to be an encyclopedia of Australian hip hop. And if he grew up listening to, Juice WRLD, Lil Xan, Lil Skies, these sort of rappers, he's going to take influence from them. You can't really blame him for, not listening to the same things that you did. That's my take on it. I'm just happy to see him on the stage doing that. You know what I mean? Just obviously, like I was saying before, knowing him from, when he was out there hustling so hard and doing this and doing that. I just respect how far he's gotten. And yeah, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, and like a lot of people might be screaming that he's not doing things correctly, but I don't even know what that means anymore.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair point. There are more Aussie rappers than people would imagine that have been more influenced by American hip hop than anything. For even UK artists, majority of the UK artists that you guys would have heard of were influenced on the 50 Cents, the Jay-Z's, the Kanye West, the Tupacs, the Biggies, of those two generations. And so you've got to remember that in that time growing up, let's speak on behalf of the UK real quick. When Skepta was growing up, he wasn't looking up to UK artists because UK music wasn't as big of a thing. He was probably looking up to more American artists. And I'm not quoting Skepta there because maybe he was, but, and then now we go to Australia. Only now, these young artists of today's era, now they have less of an excuse in some ways because they have grown up seeing Australia hip-hop. So the 10-year-olds now, the 10 to 14-year-olds you've got now, in 5 to 10 years time when they start doing their thing, they are the ones who have less of an excuse in some ways because they should grow up and have at least heard of the Chills, the Cursors, the Hefts, the OneFours, the people of that nature, and so what's interesting is this is how a sound develops, because you've got all of the artists that today are trying something new. They are then inspiring a generation 10 years younger than them. When that younger generation in 10 years time, when they grow up, their music is then purely influenced on that generation. Then they create something slightly different, and then you can see how music and a sound progresses over time. It would be ludicrous to say, but all hip-hop and all rap should sound like hip-hop of 1985. No. The sound will progress. And the same way people now are going, but this is not real music. In 10 years time, I might be someone that goes, but this is not real music. There's gonna be a day when that happens. The same way an older generation looks down at us and goes, they're fucked in this social media age. And then we look down at them and we go, oh man, they are so fucked. And it's a generational thing. It happens, man. It happens.
That's already happening with me, man, because I'm 30, and I'm trying to get my head around TikTok, and I can't get my head around it. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? But at the same time, I got to pull myself out of that old head mentality and say, you know what? When I was 18, 19, and MySpace and Instagram was first popping, people were probably saying the same shit about me, and people did say the same shit about me. Like I was saying before, hip hop's so territorial. And when I first started, doing stuff in the hip hop scene, I was working at streetwear stores and stuff as well. People were like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is that dude wearing tight jeans? Why is that dude dressing like this? Why is that guy doing that? People say the same thing about me. So it would be kind of stupid and hypocritical of me to kind of sit there as a 30-year-old now and be like, oh, that shit's whack. Because people are saying the same thing about me. And people still probably say the same thing about me.
It happens, though. I mean, like, if I look at my granddad looking down at my dad, and it was like, he's sitting on the Atari, sitting on the Sega Mega Drive too much. Why is he playing so many games? Like, his brain's gonna get melted. Then my dad looks down at me. Hey, why is he playing PC games and making YouTube videos? What's this about? And in the same way, I'm gonna look down at my future son or daughter and I'm gonna be like, whatever it's gonna be at that time. I don't know. Why are you living in a VR world? I don't know. And so it's just one of those things where times progress and things just move, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be like the third version of TikTok.
It's gonna be some crazy shit that we can't even think of now. I mean, and we can sit there and go, there'll be flying cars in 50 years. They thought there'll be flying cars in 1980. So I don't know when all of that shit is gonna happen. But ultimately, I think we need to do our best to be open-minded to change. And I think it's important to remember where things stem from. I think it's important to remember the history of things. I think it's important to understand the origins of what you are currently doing. I personally believe that. But that doesn't mean that you need to scream it in every little thing you do. I think you need to be open and welcome to change. I think you need to be trying new things. And I think ultimately that is what's for the culture, is by pushing the culture forward, by educating yourself and educating others at the right times about where things stem and come from, but also then trying to push things forward. That's my personal take on how you help the culture and how you understand things.
I would agree with that. But the thing that people also forget is that, Leroy, obviously his music is it's definitely on a more melodic route. It's not bar driven, I think that's why people are so angry about it, because it's not like he's spitting real technical bars or anything. He's definitely playing more with melody. He's using trap production. What people forget is that even though you might not like Leroy's music, if if he blows up in the States, which he kind of already has, but if he blows up to, you know, a charting artist in the States, that's going to make everyone from the States look back at Australia and be like, what's the scene like there? Because the hip hop scene in Australia is not on an international radar on a heavy scale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So someone in the States might be listening to Leroy and go, oh, fuck, Australia has a hip hop scene? Mad. And go and look back and discover someone like Mitch Ostermenis, for example, who is, you know, more respected by, you know, the OG Australian hip hop crowd. That's something that can happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because his type of music doesn't conform to your idea of hip hop, the ability of him to break through internationally and bring more attention to Australia is only going to benefit everybody in Australia. Yeah. And that's
I think this is why people got angry when it got to the No Jumper interview, because he didn't say, at least, shout out Cursor, shout out Chill, shout out OneFour. He didn't shout out at least one, and I think that's why people were so angry. But as you said, you know, he's making noise in America, but he's not at that top tier or even that second tier. I mean, you know, but if he ever got there, all he would have to do is, yeah, man, Australia has a whole scene, and as you said, a whole handful of people are going to come over. The same way I watched that Triple J cypher with Alex Jones, Chill, Husky and Nerve, and I went, what is this? And then I just went into a wormhole of Australian hip-hop, grime, rap, drill, and here we are now. So, you know, I think it's a matter of the right people seeing the right things, you know. I mean, the UK are still having it. I think the world knows, you know, if you are a hip hop, rap, grime, drill, etc., whatever subgenre you want to pick, I think people in the right places know of the UK scene. But it's still not on that household level where, I don't know, Timmy from Minneapolis, you know, in the middle, wherever, knows about Skepta and Stormzy, and then furthermore going down, then knows the Kanos, the Gets, the etc., you know. Ultimately, I think, don't worry about how many people are coming over to the Australian scene, think about the right people. Because, I mean, some people could argue that, yes, I'm only one person from the UK that found out about Australian hip-hop and whatnot, but it's the right person, because now I support it, and now I'm doing my best to, you know, help the scene in any way I can. So, just remember, it's also about the right people that come over, as opposed to how many, you know. I think as, you know, but yeah. I mean, yeah, I think this is a great conversation, and the last thing I'll say on Leroy very quickly is there's a difference between what Leroy makes, let's class it as melodic trap, versus Aussie hip-hop. Like, go listen to Trem and then go listen to Leroy. They're making two different kinds of music, so can we stop saying Leroy's not helping Aussie hip-hop, because Leroy doesn't make Aussie hip-hop sound. He doesn't make that sound. And that's the last thing I'll say on Leroy, I guess.
Yeah, but again, like, it would be ludicrous to even try and make Leroy make that sort of music, you know what I mean? I respect him more what he's doing now, because if Leroy was 16 years old in America, 16 years old, making music like about like in the route of that, about fucking painting trains and doing crimes, if he hasn't lived that life, you know, why would you want him to make that sort of music? You know what I mean? I respect him more because he has done the style of music that he grew up on, you know. Again, he was 14 or 15 at the time. He grew up on that melodic rap sound. I don't hate him or blame him in any way for taking influence from that. Yeah. You know, I think, you know, do you want him to rap like traditional boom bap style at 15 years old when he never heard that style of music? Wouldn't that then be fake in a way? You know, so I just respect him for, you know, listening to the music that he wants and kind of putting his own interpretation on that. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but at the end of the day, he's you know, he's making his impact, you know. Yeah. And I think in a couple of years' time, maybe we will have that trickle down effect back to Australia in the same way, you know. I'm sure that happened with Skepta and Storm. I can't speak on the UK, but you know, when Skepta and Stormzy kind of blew up to that next kind of level, I'm sure a lot of people were going back and, like you said, listening to Gets, listening to Roll Deep, listening to, you know, Kano and stuff like that. You know, that might happen. You know, I think it will happen. Yeah, no, definitely, man. Kev, I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast, man. It's been a great conversation. Is there anything that you want to plug? Anything you want to shout out? Any last message that you want to give people? No, not really. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, bro. You know, you putting on for the Australian scene consistently. People back here really appreciate it. Triple One and Nerve both going to have really big years this year. We got a lot of music to drop. And Filter, yeah, we're kind of expanding the show, doing more shows, doing more stuff with emerging artists, doing more stuff with R&B artists, not just kind of staying in that one corner. And yeah, stay tuned for the content.
I appreciate it, man. And by the way, thank you for the shout out on Filter with Nerve, and you also did it with OneFour as well. Briefly with OneFour anyway, but yeah, no, I appreciate it, man.
You're part of the story, bro. That's just part of the story, you know. We have to acknowledge, like I was saying, we have to acknowledge, you know, the actual authentic story of what happened. And you know, to say that UK reactors like yourself did not play as part in the OneFour story, that would, you know, it's not true, because I was here. You know, I was here. I was watching the whole thing, and you know, like I was saying, like when those reaction videos first blew up, you know, Lex and all those boys, they were so gassed on it. You know, they were so surprised and so gassed that people from the UK were putting them on. So that was part of the story. So I just had to put it in.